It was in Jonesboro, Arkansas on August 24th, 2011, that a horrified Michelle Despain came home from a day out to find her husband dead on the kitchen floor. Of course, she immediately called 911 and police arrived on the scene to find that Marc Despain had been shot twice. Police found broken glass, they found drawers pulled out and stuff thrown everywhere, and it looked like a scene where there had been a burglary that maybe Marc walked into, and he was killed for that reason. Police did realize early on that valuables that would have been taken in a robbery were still in the home, so they began to think that the murder scene had been staged to look like a robbery. They talked to neighbors and asked neighbors if they saw anything suspicious, and neighbors said that they saw a black male driving a blue Mercedes around the neighborhood that day. The Despain family was well off financially, and they lived in a really nice neighborhood in Jonesboro. Marc learned the skill of real estate from his parents. He was originally in business with his father, but he decided he wanted to start his own business, and so he and his father split ways. There was some disagreements about some things, and so Marc's father, Jack Despain, had not spoke to him for a while before Marc's death. So when police began to interview people around the family, automatically some people started pointing the finger at Jack Despain, saying that he cared more about money than he did about his son or his relationship with the son. According to police, Jack Despain was genuinely devastated over the murder of his son, and they didn't feel like that was an act. Part of the issue in Marc and Jack Despain's relationship were essay allegations involving Marc's stepdaughter. Apparently, there was an inappropriate photo of Marc's stepdaughter found on Jack's phone. Jack was never charged with a crime, and it did eventually come out that the stepdaughter actually just borrowed Jack's phone to take the photo of herself for whatever reason. Marc's parents believed that Marc's wife, Michelle, was at the center of that, trying to cause disharmony in the family, but that's something that he was never charged for, and since the stepdaughter had actually just taken a selfie. Police believed that it was possible that Michelle Despain had something to do with her husband's death, but they really didn't have a lot of information to go off at the time until a few days after Marc's visitation, whenever people started coming forward saying that a man named Terrence Barker, who also went by the nickname Qualo, was saying around town that he had been the one that shot Marc Despain. When police pulled Terrence Barker in for questioning, at first he denied it, but then he said a man named Johnny Hubbard had been the one to drive him to the home, and that he did indeed go in and shoot Marc Despain. Terrence Barker said he met Johnny Hubbard in the parking lot, and there was a man that had hired them to get the job done. When he asked who that man was, he identified the man as Carl Kelly, who is Michelle Despain's father. He started to hear from people that Michelle was really calm at the scene before the police showed up. There were family members of Marc's that were saying that Michelle was really clean for saying that she found her husband dead with blood all over him. So obviously she hadn't touched him or anything like that. And police started to realize that she really didn't show a lot of emotion. So they brought her in and asked her if she had anything to do with the death of her husband. And she said no, but she did admit that she had been having an affair with a younger man and using family finances to pay for that man. Apparently, Michelle had been buying this man's groceries, paying for him to have an apartment to live in. She also paid for him to move to that apartment. Police hadn't proved that Michelle had anything to do with Marc Despain's death, so she was able to collect 2 life insurance policies after his death. Police were still investigating. They were able to recover deleted messages between Michelle and her father on the day of the murder, where Michelle sent him a message that said, "has to be today." They said that Carl instructed Michelle to get Marc out of the house. So Michelle took Marc and they went out to lunch that day so that Terrence Barker could go into the home and wait for Marc to come home. And also, Michelle's father was texting her a play-by-play during the course of the murder. So all four of these people were arrested. Carl Kelly was arrested, Terrence Barker, Johnny Hubbard, and Michelle Despain. All four of the suspects were arrested and charged with capital murder. Michelle Despain actually got a sweetheart deal. She pled guilty to hindering apprehension and was sentenced to 30 years, which allowed her to be eligible for parole after 5. Michelle has since been paroled. She has remarried and is living in Benton, Arkansas, from what I can find. Terrence Barker pled guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to 35 years in prison. He will not be eligible for parole until 2036. I do believe that this is because of a new law, which makes his crime a violent one, and means he has to serve more of his sentence before being eligible for parole, unlike Michelle. Johnny Hubbard was actually already on probation for a drug charge, so he got 40 years on that probation revocation and 18 years for hindering apprehension or prosecution, so he will be eligible for parole in 2025. Carl Kelly was sentenced to 35 years in prison for first-degree murder, but he died of congestive heart failure while serving his time in prison. I don't know. To me, it's really unfair that Michelle Despain is the person that benefited the most from her husband's murder, but she's out getting to live her life. And how in the world did she find another person to marry her after she planned and helped plot the murder of her last husband? That's just my opinion, though.